So approaches to industrial relations. What is meant by an approach? Yes, it is how do you view a certain thing, or what is your perspective towards a particular subject or a particular concept. So in this case, since we are dealing with industrial relations, approaches to industrial relations meant the perspectives or the theoretical frameworks towards viewing the industrial relations. So what is an industrial relation? Basically the relationship that exists between an employee, employer and the government. Employee, employer, government. It is a tripartite relation. Each and every one of them will be interacting with each other. That is industrial relations. So in this we are going to read about perspectives or theoretical frameworks. There are different theories of industrial relations or approaches in which each of them views or thinks of industrial relations in a different manner. Suppose some view industrial relation in a positive sense. Some might talk of it as a negative sense. Some might have a neutral opinion on it. Or else some theories say conflicts are not at all necessary or trade unions are not at all necessary. Some say they are very integral part of it. So we learn about different theories and how there are certain features of it. What is the core idea of a particular approach, or what are the features of that particular approach? This topic is very important. At least 2 questions you can expect from this topic. So listen carefully, take notes of it also. So these are the certain approaches. Not all approaches are important from the point of exam. We'll read certain approaches which are important in very detail, and rest of the approaches we'll know the core idea of an approach and we'll move on. See, just get familiarized with the names first. Systems approach, unitary approach, pluralist approach, Marxist, sociological, Gandhian, psychological, human relations. These are some of the approaches. We'll deal with each of the approach in detail. There are other approaches also. These are not much important, but still we'll know the core idea of it. V.V. Giri approach, human relations, Oxford, sociological, we mentioned it in previous slide also, action theory approach. Okay. So the first one is unitary approach. Okay. What is basically a unit? Any theory or whatever, any new subject if you are picking up, just directly don't go into the subject and start reading. Just see the term, try to understand yourself. What is your understanding of that term? Because whatever exam you are attempting, either EPFO or CSC, it is not that every time you get to see the questions that you know. There are certain questions you have to answer with your common sense. Even if you don't know, you should try attempting them. So how do you approach them? You have to think of it. Just like layman, you don't know anything, but what comes into your mind when you think of a unitary approach? So before directly seeing the slide or studying something, just think of your own. Okay, what is a unit? Okay, yes, it is like unit is a single entity, right? We are talking about a single entity. In this case, if you are talking about unit, we are studying about industry. So industry is a single unit, or whoever are present in the industry, they are a single team. Employees, employers. It's not that employees and employers are two different teams competing with each other. No, they are the same team. They're the members of the same team, and they have to work in cooperation with each other in order to achieve the same goals. Yesterday we have studied that employees, employers are two different groups. I mean, there are two groups with different interests of their own, right? Employee will have certain interests of having higher wages or having better working conditions, all these. An employer will have a perspective of getting more profits, more productivity, all this. But in this unitary approach, what it assumes is both employee and employer work for the same goal. Let us understand this with an example. Assume an industry. Obviously, employer will have a perspective that he wants to produce more units. Suppose they are producing cars. This industry is producing cars. So, employee will have a perspective that in this month, this amount of cars has to be produced. Suppose he wants to produce some 50 cars in that particular month. This is his main goal for that month. Employee should also work with the same goal. Employee should also think that, yes, we have to produce 50 cars. This is my main goal. Even if the employee is asked to come on weekends or he is asked to stay and work overnight, even if he is paid less wage, he won't be dissatisfied because his main goal is also to produce 50 cars in that month. That is the reason both of them have same goal. When both are working with the same goal, with same interest, there is no chance of conflict in this particular approach, right? Even if his employer says you have to stay overnight and work today, employee won't complain about it because his aim is also the same. Understood? This is the core of it. They work as a single team. Both of them are working towards a common goal. In this case, there is no chance of conflict. So this particular approach assumes that conflicts are not at all necessary. They don't come in the first place. Even if they come, they're very disruptive. They're not needed. I mean, this particular approach thinks of. Okay, let me tell you, whatever approach we are reading, we'll follow this method. What is the core idea of the approach? So core idea in this particular approach is, it assumes as a one unit, they are having common interests, work for the common goal. How does that particular approach look at conflicts? How does that particular approach look at trade unions? If a problem comes or conflict comes, what is the solution methodology that they use? Apart from this, there are certain other features of each approach that we go through, but this is a common, these 4 common points you have to remember and you have to be able to compare it with each approach. So in exam, if question comes, you don't get confused. So this point we have covered in this approach. Conflicts. Conflicts are treated as something which are unnecessary, not needed, or in fact disruptive. When there is no scope of conflicts, why does trade unions come into picture? So this approach also believes trade unions are also not necessary. They don't recognize trade unions. They don't recognize trade unions as legitimate associations because for them, trade unions are also not necessary things. So solution. So we'll read about it. Understood the core idea of it, right? So let us look at the slide. Core idea is the organization is seen as single, one integrated team, work towards common set of goals. It assumes harmony and cooperation. It always is, maybe this is an idealistic approach. This is not true in practical scenarios, but this is what it assumes to be. Conflicts are seen as temporary and disruptive. Even if a conflict comes, for suppose, it is just because of poor management. It is not that employees are going on strike because working conditions are very bad or employees are going on strike because wages are not given properly. No, not such big issues. Just because of poor management. Suppose the management is unable to convey things in a certain way. Miscommunication happened or poor communication happened. That is simple reasons. Because of simple reasons, conflict might arise, but they are not permanent kind of issues or very big issues as such. Understood? We have also discussed this point. Trade unions are also seen as unnecessary and disruptive. If then only for economic purpose, only for a limited purpose. Basically, trade unions are unnecessary as concerned for this approach because management is expected to act in the best interest of employee. So, there is one more example that I want to give in this particular theory. Assume a family, a nuclear family, father, mother and 2 children. Assume this family exists somewhere in time period 2005-6, not now generation, not the one in generation. So, father is the head of the family, assuming it. And whatever father says, everybody is expected to listen. Even if it is in conflict with the interest of children, then mother says, no, you should not say against father because he is saying only for the good of you. Whatever he says, even if he scolds you, right, that is only for your own benefit. That is what father or the family as a whole tries to convince you. There are no big conflicts or whatever father says, we just listen, right? We just don't contradict with him. So this is such an approach. In this approach, management is assumed to be a paternal figure. So this approach is called paternalistic or fatherly approach towards industrial relation. In this case, whatever management is doing, it is assumed that it is doing only for the good of workers, only for the best or to ensure best for the employees. In this case, there is also a negative point, right? Suppose if father says this one of the child is interested in acting, but father wants him to become a doctor or engineer. Okay, even he's not raising his voice here, right? So his voice is suppressed. In the same way, even if a trade union has some problem or trade union has some issue, it is unable to rise it because they say that no, we are only telling for the best of you, just listen to us, you will be good. That is how management always tries to convince them. So management is expected to act in the best interest of the employees. This point, now that if you remember that example, you don't have to study this approach. All the points you can just correlate and answer the question. Management role is acting as a paternal figure, guiding and taking care of workers' welfare, and the only source of authority. Whatever father says, only that goes on. No opposition. So here management is assumed to be the only source of authority. No one has a say in it. Okay? And employee loyalty. Workers are expected to be loyal and committed to the organization because everybody is working with the same goal. This is also expected. What is solution? We talked, right? Conflicts won't come in the first place. Even if they come, that is only because of poor management. So the solution lies in the problem itself, right? Just better communication, simple better communication by management would avoid the problems. This approach is clear? See, when you read an approach, summarize it in your mind. Core idea, single unit, okay, with common set of goals. Conflicts, unnecessary. Trade unions, unnecessary. So, I am telling you the pointers where your questions might come from. Conflicts, unnecessary. Trade unions, unnecessary. And paternalistic kind of approach. Management is the only source of authority. I mean, if an option comes like in this particular approach, management is the only source of authority. Yes, true. Okay. And simple solution like better communication could solve an issue. Yes, true. These are the pointers. Now let us go on to the next approach. This is very simple topic if you understand. 2 questions easily expected from this topic. So pluralistic approach, okay. Unitary approach, I told you how to think of it as a unit. Now plural, now tell me what is plural here. More number of people, more number of groups, more number of ideologies, different interests of different groups. Just imagine in this picture, these are the people who are working, right? Employees. Maybe he is some supervisory cadre, he is some managerial cadre person. So there are different groups that exist in industry. When compared to unitary approach, this is little similar to the practical scenario. So the different groups exist in an industry. Each of the group is having their own interests. Since different interests are present, conflicts are inevitable. So here conflicts are seen to be something that can't be avoided. So core idea we learned, conflict is something that can't be avoided. So this approach accepts that conflicts will be coming in the industry. Since conflicts are coming up in industry, trade unions are also seen to be a valid form of associations and they are legitimate enough to represent the problems when conflict comes. Simple. See core idea. The pluralistic perspective sees the workplace as made up of different groups with their own legitimate interests, goals or values. Unlike the unitary approach, pluralism accepts that conflicts are natural and inevitable. Now, this also organization, see, okay, the last picture we have seen, organizations are coalitions of competing groups. Each of them compete with each other to achieve their own goals. Conflict is inherent but manageable through rules and institutions. Trade unions. Trade unions are legitimate representatives of employees and play a key role in balancing power, because to balance the imbalance in the power that exists in an industry, trade unions play a very important role. Role of management. Role of management, what did we see role of management in the previous unitary approach? Management is the sole authority. Management is like a paternal figure. So whenever we are reading some next approach, always try to connect it with the past approaches. So here itself you remember, no need to go home and again take the book and read. So management, here it is assumed there are different groups. So management is not only authority, not only to achieve vision but to accommodate and reconcile diverse interests. So here management role is to balance the diverse interests. It's not like my goal is important, you have to follow everything. That is what unitary approach says. But here different people exist with different goals. Management has to balance all the interests. Okay. Decentralized control. Everybody is given certain amount of power to have control on. Suppose if there is a problem, trade unions will be heard. If the problems will be heard and accordingly some rule or regulation will be changed. So decentralized control. Management to mediate. It's not like a fatherly figure, but it will like mediate. What do you want? Tell me. You want to become an actor? Okay. Let us come first do MBBS, then you can go for acting. Maybe some common point they might arrive at. What is the solution? Last solution, what did we say? Simple communication method will be a solution to window method. Here, since conflict comes, both of them has to sit, both parties or whatever parties are there, they have to sit at one place, do the negotiations, collective bargaining, and then come to a common solution, which is acceptable by all the parties. Collective bargaining, conciliation, arbitration, joint negotiations. Collective bargaining, we have a different lecture. All these terms will be dealt with. What is a conciliation? What is arbitration? What is joint negotiation? I'll tell you. But these terms keep coming up in this particular PPT. So I'll just brief you about those terms, but in detail we'll go after some time. So collective bargaining is bargaining at the collective level. Simple understanding. So a group goes and bargains, not a single person or a single individual. So there are many methods in which they can do this. The first is basic negotiation. They just sit together, discuss what do you want, what I want. Let us arrive at a common point. Simple. This is what negotiation is. Then we have conciliation, arbitration, adjudication. Okay. So negotiation is just the two parties will be involved. So if any conflict comes, first they should be able to settle among themselves instead of calling a third party. That is negotiation. Conciliation is there will be a third party involved here, but third party is not someone who is neutral party. Just like a conflict between three friends. If two friends are fighting, the third person will come, "Arey yaar, you listen to him or you also listen to him." They just try to convince among themselves in an informal way, not like a formal way. So conciliation, if a judgment comes, that might not be binding. They might listen, both the parties might listen or might not listen. So conciliation is something where third party is involved. It is informal way of negotiations or informal way of collective bargaining and not binding. There is no guarantee that you will listen to the third friend. You will just ask him, "You get out from here, we will see someone else." So that is conciliation. And if you look at arbitration, this is a more formal way. In arbitration, there will exist a person called arbitrator. He is a neutral third party. He will come and tell you the judgment or the solution, whatever it is. Since the neutral third party has come and told it, and this arbitrator would be appointed in such a way that both the parties should accept. Suppose two people were in conflict with each other, two groups were in conflict with each other, they should both mutually agree that we will appoint this particular company or this particular person as an arbitrator. So mutually they appoint some person, third party, it's a neutral party and more formal way of solving the things, and it is binding on both the parties. Okay. Whatever judgment or the solution this arbitrator gives, both the parties should bind to that particular solution. Yes. It's not conciliation. Third party వాళ్ళు appoint చేసుకుంటారని కాదు, అది informal way. Someone mediates. It's like mediation. They'll come in between and try to mediate. Adjudication. When the issue goes to courts or tribunals, if the settlement happens at labor courts or tribunals, that is called adjudication. Here see, the state or government is getting involved. Basically, see, there are basically in India, you know the delay or pendency of judgments in courts, right? So if they go to courts, that issue will remain unsolved for years. So instead of and it also overburdens the government with all this. See, there will be many disputes that are going on a daily basis in many industries. Every case that comes to court, it will be very difficult for the judiciary also, and it will be not beneficial to the employees and employers also. That is why they try to settle it external to the adjudication. They try to settle it instead of labor courts or tribunals. They try to go for third party, neutral party somewhere else. So preferably it should be in this procedure. Mostly no. Arbitration, it's like binding, because in the first place, even before starting the arbitration, it is both the parties accepted, right? We are appointing him, we will listen to him. Only after prior approval, they started arbitration. Later they can't say we won't listen to you. Both of them agreed, right? That's why there won't be any scope for appeal in arbitration mostly, in most of the cases. This is adjudication. This is also the process in which they have to go. First, it has to be bipartite settlement. The two parties should be able to solve it among themselves. If not possible, then it goes to tripartite settlement. Understood? ఇంకా వెళ్ళడానికి అవ్వదు. సి దీని తర్వాత వెళ్తారు అని చెప్పట్లేదు. కొన్నిసార్లు వాళ్ళు నెగోషియేషన్స్ ఈ న్యూట్రల్ థర్డ్ పార్టీస్ కన్సిలియేషన్స్ లేకుండా డైరెక్ట్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్, దట్ ఈస్ ద రీజన్ ఐ డ్రూ ఇట్ లైక్ దిస్. దిస్ ఇస్ నాట్ సంథింగ్ ఆఫ్టర్ ఆర్బిట్రేషన్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్కి వెళ్తారు అని కాదు. ఇదేంటంటే ఇది డిఫరెంట్, ఇవి కలెక్టివ్ బార్గెనింగ్ మెథడ్స్. సమ్ టైమ్స్ కొన్ని కేసెస్ డైరెక్ట్గా కోర్టుకి వెళ్ళిపోవచ్చు, కానీ జనరల్గా ఇండస్ట్రీస్ డోంట్ ప్రిఫర్ ఇట్ టు టేక్ ఇట్ టు కోర్ట్స్ ఆర్ ట్రిబ్యునల్స్. అక్కడికి వెళ్తే అది ఎప్పుడు సాల్వ్ అవుద్దో తెలియదు. సో ఇన్స్టెడ్ దే విల్ గో ఫర్ దీస్ మెథడ్స్. It's not that after arbitration they go for adjudication. No, it's not that way. So we jumped from pluralistic approach to this because these terms keep coming. Why did we go to that topic? Solution. Here they focus on collective bargaining methods like conciliation, arbitration and negotiations. Okay. Pluralistic approach is clear. They emphasize the role of trade unions, collective bargaining, industrial law tribunals, labor laws and arbitration systems to mediate and regulate conflicts. Okay, unitary approach. Okay, let us do unitary and pluralist together. What are the strength of this approach is, since they are assuming it to be a team, teamwork will be very strengthened, very strong teamwork or very strong loyalty will be seen. Since conflicts are assumed to be not there, the industry will always be at peace and harmony. So this is one strength of unitary approach. It reduces all the strikes and disputes and encourages more direct communication. They are saying, right, just poor communication, because of pure communication these conflicts are coming. So just simple direct communication. They are encouraging the direct communications, because in unitary approach you don't see collective bargaining methods, all this. So they are just trying to settle it bipartite even if something happens. Limitations: ignores the power difference. One is becoming, management has become the sole authority. Employees are not having any trade unions to represent their voice. Downplays the legitimate role of trade unions. Unrealistic. Yesterday we also mentioned a point, right? Industrial relations is like a coin. If cooperation is there, conflict will also be there. You can't separate one from each other. That point is being neglected in unitary approach. Can be paternalistic. Being paternalistic is not bad, but limiting the voice of the workers is something that is a limitation of this approach. Example, yeah, family-owned businesses or organizations with strong corporate culture. This kind of approach might be applicable in this Japanese companies where their own family itself works, but they don't work like a family. They treat them like a real organization and the employees. If someone says, since it is a family, it is assumed that everything done by the employer is for the good of the employees. Okay. What are strengths of pluralism? This is more realistic than unitary approach. Promotes fairness because it is giving the voice to workers through trade unions. Encourages many mechanisms. We have seen collective bargaining methods, all it is encouraging. Criticisms is may overemphasize harmony and underestimate deep structural inequalities. A criticism of one approach will be a foundation of another approach, right? Next we'll read an approach called Marxist approach, where he says that employers and employees are two different classes of people. These are rich, these are poor. They can't be in harmony even if you negotiate, even if you do collective bargaining. No. Harmony is something that can't be achieved between these two groups. That is what the next approach says. So that is a criticism of this approach. This is not talking about it. Because, see, there are many inequalities that exist in the society, right? Between haves and have-nots. Suppose there are social inequalities. Do you think they will be ignored? It is not talking, no. This particular approach is not talking about any inequalities. Societal inequalities. It is not focusing. It is treating industry as a single entity. But where does industry exist at the end of the day? It is part of society, right? So where are the societal inequalities? Suppose caste-based discriminations or any gender discriminations. All that, it is not talking about all the inequalities, right? So since it is not talking about it, we are saying it is underestimating the structural societal problems or societal discriminations. Now we are saying trade unions and management will sit together and resolve the issue through methods. But do you think they are genuine all the time? No. Sometimes trade unions just have certain political affiliations with political parties, and they might do the strike for some political purpose. In that case, doing collective bargaining, resolving their issue doesn't seem to have sense. So, but this approach says, no, this is also legitimate, management is also legitimate, both are good enough, they come and solve the issue. But it is not the same case every time. More suited to Western liberal democracies, where trade unions are very independent without any affiliations and are strong enough and represent the true problems. This happens more in liberal democracies. This approach can be true, or this approach can be followed in such democracies. Okay, these two approaches are clear, right? Marxist. So Karl Marx, he basically believes, right, class struggle. He's someone who believes in class struggle, and he says this is also called radical approach. Did I mention it in the PPT? Okay. It's also called radical approach. He says industry is a part of society, right? In society, we have people who are having or being rich or have-nots. These are the capitalist society or capitalist class. Have-nots are the labor class. Capitalist class always try to exploit the labor class to grow more rich or to earn more profit. So, for him, industrial relations or industrial disputes are not just something which is limited to industry. He sees, so far what we are talking, if there is an issue, the wages, working conditions, conflicts happen because of that. We are talking like that. But now for him, the primary reason for any strike or any unrest in an industry is not things like wages or working conditions. It is because of discrimination or exploitation. It is secondary reason, wages or working conditions, because of this if strike or some unrest happens, that is secondary condition. I guess there is one previous year question that says strikes, or I don't remember the proper question. It mentions if strikes are coming because of wages or working conditions, and this is treated as a secondary thing. In which approach? Okay, you might think I'm telling too much of conceptual thing, but questions come from these. That's why I'm focusing. So if issues related to wages are treated as secondary, that is in which approach? Marxist approach. Primary reason for conflict is the have-nots or the labor class being exploited. Because they have that dissatisfaction of being exploited, that is the reason conflicts takes place in the first place. Hope you understand the core idea of it. So here Karl Marx looks at industries through the lens of society. For him, the solution is not just resolving the issues. For him, the solution is the society has to change. It is from capitalistic society, it has to be socialistic society. So class struggle, the relationship between, the industrial relations are a reflection of broader struggle between owners of production and the working class. The same concept that I taught you. Conflict is inherent, but he says the primary reason is something else, not wages, working conditions, not the constant objective things that we are reading about. Conflict is inherent, but the reasons he told us something different. Exploitation, workers are being exploited for the profit, state as a capitalist tool. And he also says an important thing here, that is, we read in the last day class that state acts as a mediator. Even in the adjudication, those are the state institutions, right? Labor courts or tribunals. For Karl Marx, he says, when state is acting as a mediator, it is not a neutral body. He says, state acts more in favor of capitalists. Whatever it does, it favors more to the capitalistic society, not the labor class. Capitalist people or haves, state is favoring them. This is what Karl Marx believes. State does many things for employees and employers. If you look what state does for employees as they, through all the DPSPs, it is providing many provisions, right? It is ensuring right to livelihood, or it is coming with schemes like MG Narega to ensure there is no unemployment, rural unemployment, or what else? It is coming with Maternity Benefit Act or Factories Act to give certain safety and working conditions, proper working conditions for labor sector. And it is also doing it is supposed to do certain things to employer welfare also. In recent labor codes, if you see, inspector, basically there will be a term called inspector in all the labor laws. He's someone who is responsible for inspections in the industries and ensuring whether industries are following all the rules and regulations or not. This inspector name was changed into inspector cum facilitator. In the new labor code, certain changes were made from the previous laws. So what do you think is the purpose behind changing it? So if an inspector goes to an establishment, he just should not do inspections alone. He should facilitate them, and it reduced many penalties also. So it is doing something in favor of employer. Here Karl Marx says it is doing more to employers than employees. Okay. This point is something you have to remember. State is assumed to be not a neutral party. In which approach? In Karl Marx approach. Role of trade unions. Whenever conflicts are inherent and inevitable, trade unions' role is also very important. So it is seen as form of work resistance against exploitation. They represent the collective power of labor to fight for fair wages, improved working conditions, and reduced exploitation. Here, unions are not just seen as someone who gets involved when conflict comes. They are reformative in nature, reformist. By being involved in negotiations, they try to reform the society. They should play such a big role at the societal level, not just in the industry. Form of political. So this is more a politicized concept, right? He's talking about society. You have to change the political form of the society. It shouldn't be capitalistic, it should be socialistic. So more politicization concept you can find in Marxist approach. Management role, industrial capitalism or so this is also one question in the previous question. Concept of surplus labor is given in which approach? Okay. Or industrial capitalism, which approach talks about industrial capitalism? I'm telling you the sample questions that you can expect. Dialectical materialism. I mean, maybe you don't have to know the terms in very much detail, but at least you should know that these terms are related to particular approach. Yesterday, I guess, we talked about dialectical, did we? It is in every aspect of the society, there exists a thesis and antithesis. Together forms a synthesis of something new. So materialism is giving importance to the material things than the ideological things. So in this perspective, he means to say that materialism, here he means they are not looking at exploitation, rather they are looking at material things like wages, economic conditions. Okay. Dialectical, he means to say that whenever such conflict occurs, management will be having one interest. That is some thesis. Trade unions will have the opposite approach, that is antithesis. Both of them sit together and come up with a solution and form synthesis of new rules and regulations. So this is dialectical materialism. Just roughly remember what it meant. They might not go deep into this topic, but they simply might ask this term you find in which approach. Simple, it's Marxist approach. And there is a concept of surplus labor. You have to understand this term also, and you have to remember that this particular term is present in Marxist approach. What is the role of management in unitary approach? What's your name? Hari. Tell me, what is the role of management in unitary approach? Okay. Okay, that's okay. What is the core idea of plural approach, pluralistic approach? Just say normal words. Okay. Okay, surplus labor we are reading, right? Okay. Let me just remember things in a simple form. Whenever a big question comes, just try to break it into smaller things and think of it. Surplus labor is a very simple concept. Suppose if a labor is working for certain amount of hours or he is producing certain amount of units, whatever he is doing, practically, ideally, he should be paid 20,000 for his work. His work is worth 20,000. Okay. But if the employer is only paying 10,000, so there is a difference in this of 10,000 rupees. This is the surplus value that is produced by employee. So the surplus value which is produced by employee is exploited by the employer, and this is going into the pockets of employer as a profit. So whatever the employer or the owners or the management is enjoying, that is because of the surplus value of labor that is produced by the employee. Concept clear? Simple. Surplus labor concept. Just the same thing is put it in words. Look at it. Workers are paid wages that cover only their basic needs and not the full value they create. This is the full value that he created for the establishment, but he is not paid for the full value that he created. The value produced over and above their wages, this is the surplus. That is the surplus value derived from surplus labor. Since this is a surplus value, so 10,000 extra work he did, right? That is called surplus labor. He gave surplus labor. Because of that surplus labor only, right, they produce profit. Understood? This surplus value is the source of either profit, interest and rent in the capital systems. Thus, exploitation arises because the capitalist extracts the surplus labor. He tries to exploit and extract the surplus labor without equivalent compensation. Understood the concept of surplus labor, right? It's very simple. Just remember the surplus labor concept is given by Karl Marx. Industrial conflict, strikes, lockouts and disputes are not accident but symptoms of deeper class conflicts. This is also the point we discussed. Conflicts is not only about the wages or conditions but about the control of the production process or distribution of economic surplus. So he mean to say the exploitation. So this is the primary, this is also a reason, this is also a reason, this is the primary reason for the conflict. Okay. Role of state, this also we discussed, not neutral, upholds laws that protect the capitalist interests. It protects the capitalists. Labor laws may grant limited rights. They are granting limited rights to workers, but their main aim was to regulate conflict so that capitalism can continue smoothly. Here he is not saying that they want to regulate conflict for the benefit of employees. He says state is involving in resolving the issue so that industry will run smoothly and employer will benefit, not for the purpose of employees. Just go through this slide and if you have any doubts, just ask me. It's political rather than just economic. Genuine harmony is impossible. Previously, we are talking about solutions, right? In first unitary approach, what did we think? Management, good communication, problem solved. Second plural approach, management, collective bargaining, methods, problem solved. In this he says it's impossible. Only you have to change the society. Some revolution has to take place. Change the capitalistic society to socialistic society. Only then this problem will be solved. Long-term solution, replacement of capitalism with socialism or communism, where workers control the production. So the solution is revolution and the change of society. Clear, right? 3 approaches. Just go through this slide for your understanding. I mean, my intention of teaching class in this way is, you don't have to, after going home, I don't want you to spend more time on this topic. In class itself, you have to gain, at the same time you have to revise it so that you can read other subjects at home. Common interest, different interest, unequal distribution, conflicts not necessary, will be there. Trade unions not necessary, will be there. Solution, management, conflicts, change in society. Management is single authority, here decentralized control. Management is capitalistic kind of mentality. Focus is organization and performance. They just want the organization to run smoothly. No conflict, no trade unions, nothing. Here employee protection is also given focus. It's completely against the capitalism. I think telling all the approaches in one day will be exhausting for you. Shall we go to some other topic is what I'm thinking right now. Continue? At a stretch, finish it off and leave it. You want it that way? Okay. Systems approach. And there are certain approaches where people are mentioned, or the labor economists, we call them labor economists to be specific, mentioned. You have to remember the names. That might be one question. In some question they asked systems approach is given by whom? Okay. Or there is another approach that comes up, human relations approach is given by whom? The last 3 approaches we have only Karl Marx as a personality. So wherever a name of personality comes, that is also the point to be remembered. Okay. So it is given by, you are unable to see that, T. Dunlop. Yesterday, while reading definitions, I guess I have given the definition of industrial relations by T. Dunlop. So he is the personality that came up with this theory called systems approach. Where did he give this theory or approach? In his book of industrial relation systems. So far, what did we see? It is like they're simply saying conflicts are necessary or not, or trade unions are necessary or not. They're fixing points. Okay, but this approach is more dynamic. This do not talk in specificity that conflicts are necessary or not necessary. Trade unions, no, it do not talk in specific way. It talks about industrial relations as a whole. How does it work? That is what it talks about. So it assumes that this is also some point we talked already. Society, IR is a subset of society. Okay, so industrial relations is something that do not work independently. It has influence of everything that is happening in the society. If something that is happening in the society, some economic factor or some political factor or some technological factor, this different environmental factors exist right here. All these environmental factors also interact with industrial relations. Who are in industrial relations? Employees, and employers and government. So all these environmental factors have their impact on the players of industrial relation, and together they form rules and regulations. Previous approaches, what they said is, they directly gave the rules and regulations. Like, this is necessary, this is not, management role is this, management role is that. They just gave it, but that is not applicable across all the parts of the world, or not applicable across all the periods of time, right? So this approach is more dynamic and evolving. It is not talking about this is the rule, this is the regulation. No, it is saying that rules and regulations change with time. Okay, based on the environmental factors at that particular point of time, and how are the environmental factors affecting the industrial relations, then based on everything, the new rule and regulation comes up. That is why if a question comes like this, already 3 approaches we read, and 4th approach is this, all the 4 options are given in the question and asked which of the following is the dynamic approach among all. It is systems approach. Okay, that is how you read read this chapter. Always when you're reading, question yourself, read it in a questioning format. Okay, it is how, that is what important for exam. You're not writing mains exam for this, you're writing just an objective exam. So whenever you read a point, think how a question can be asked from this particular point. So first point we read, the personality might be asked. Second point we read, which is more dynamic. Okay, your approach towards, now we are talking about your approach towards examination. That has to be in what way? It has to be in questioning yourself and reading the pointer. So there are basically 3 things that is talked about. Environmental factors, there might be political, economic, social, whatever it is, technological, all the factors that are happening in the surroundings in a society. And this is an industry. We have employees, employers, government. This results in form of rules and regulations or new institutions, if at all. Okay. Now let us read the statement. It views IR as a subsystem of society. Okay, involving structured interactions among these players, all influenced by the environment. Clear? All these are market conditions, maybe the inflation, or maybe the rate of unemployment, or maybe some other market factor, technology, distribution of, what is this? Distribution of power in the society. They mean to say what kind of society exists. It is a communist kind of society, capitalist or socialist form. That also, what particular political system exists in that country or place, that also determines. Union, here I mean to say trade union, management, government, this results in the form of rules of workplace. He is not giving what are the rules of workplace. Instead, he is giving how the rules of workplace have come in the first place. So these are the actors influenced by, these are the environmental factors, finally governed by the rules. Okay. Interaction among the actors produce the rules. These rules then influence future behavior and relations, okay? The system is dynamic. This is also something that we focused on. Which is the most dynamic? This is so far the most dynamic approach that we have read. It gives holistic framework, right? This approach will be a valid approach if you study it now or in future or in past. Because this is applicable anywhere. Such a holistic and progressive approach shows the interconnectedness, how everything is connected. He clearly mentioned it. Emphasizes the dynamic and evolving nature of workplace. This is emphasized, which is a very good thing. Criticisms, too abstract and sometimes descriptive rather than analytical. It described things, but it did not analyze things in a much detailed manner. You don't have to read what are advantages, what are criticisms. You're not writing mains anyways, but just for your understanding of the approach. May overemphasize harmony and rule making, conflict and power struggle. All the approaches so far talked about this, right? This approach did not talk about it. Doesn't fully explain rapid changes. Okay. It explains these are the rules. I mean, these might be the factors or these might be the conditions, but it did not go into detail and explain certain things like globalization, the new gig economy or the informal employment. Maybe at that time they do not exist at all. ఏదో criticism చేయాలి కదా. It's natural, human. You have to criticize something or the other, right? If someone gives an approach. What's your optional in CSE? Okay, that's the reason you don't know. If you read sociology or anthropology or subjects like that, where theories, you get to read about a lot of theories, then sometimes we feel like, why are they criticizing? They just criticize for the sake of criticizing in certain approaches. They might not be so significant points, but criticisms are very important. Sometimes a small criticism might seem irrelevant, but later on a new theory comes up from the same criticism. He's happy, right? Why is he happy? Because he's getting higher wages? Maybe. He's getting higher wages, or he's getting nice workplace, or their company might have given him a new MacBook. Okay. But it is not the same case always. Okay. Because it is not the objective things that are always important. If you are given higher wages, or if you are given a MacBook or an iPhone, no, that do not result in your happiness all the times. The psychological satisfaction is also so much important. He's getting all of this, but employee said, every day I'll scold you for 10 minutes. He might accept it at that point in time, but later he might get depressed. Or he's not given weekends, holidays, nothing. He's not getting time to go to trips or spend time with friends or family. Will he be happy? At the end of the day, it affects his mental health and affects his productivity, and at last it is not beneficial to the employer. So this approach basically says is, it's not just the objective things. It's beyond that. Psychological happiness is also important. He has to be treated with dignity, or he has to be respected, right? Or else he won't be happy. So this approach basically talks about that thing. In this, it believes differences often stem from differences in perception, attitudes and expectations between workers and management. They are not just objective issues, but also subjective and emotional. Why we are calling subjective is, the source of happiness might not be same for everybody. For some, it is just really the wages or money that is important, but not for everybody. So this is such a subjective approach. Okay. So applications is, how do you apply this approach in industrial relations? See, every industry or establishment have certain rules of its own. When it is framing the rules itself, they have to frame it in such a way that it also meets the emotional needs of the employees. Okay. Like, also make sure that they are happy not just because of economic factors, but also because of psychological satisfaction. Like, if a worker is working so hard and producing so much for the company by being efficient, recognize him, give him Employee of the Month award. That makes him happy, right? Or give him better working conditions, or just create some recreational activities per se, conduct games once in a week, give prizes to the workers. This might be a very simple steps, but they result in, that is why IT companies, just look at them, how they function. They have all the sports equipment in their office, so that they just don't feel overburdened. Beyond the wages, they have to get satisfaction from these things also. That is what this approach basically says. So how do we apply it is improving negotiation by recognizing emotional undercurrents. So when some conflict comes and collective bargaining or negotiation is happening between employees and employers, don't just understand his words, understand his emotional undercurrent that is in his mind. Try to understand his emotional things also and work on it. Conflict resolution, not only material demands, but also feelings of respect, fairness, and dignity. All of this are also very important. Workplace policies, designing systems that meet both economic and psychological needs. Change management, understanding resistance such as, okay, it's not just a technical issue, it's also a psychological issue. So management has to think in that way and come up with new set of rules and regulations. First three theories are little hectic. From here, you don't have much points to remember. By the name itself, they are very clear. So not much to remember, just listen it. Next is human relations. The point to remember here is it is given by some person called Elton Mayo. This is also a question. Human relations approach is given by whom? He has done certain studies called Have-Done studies. Try to remember this name also if possible. So in his studies, what he observed is, now we are going, what approach did we read? Psychological, human relations approach, and sociological approach next we are going to read. These three might sound more or less similar. All of these three approaches talk about not just objective things like wages or working conditions. You have to think beyond that. Don't get much confused, and even if a question is asked, options won't be in such a way that all these three options are present. Okay, you will be clearly answering it, so don't worry. So what the studies showed that workers' productivity was not only, here he is talking about workers' productivity. Last time, the interconnection was not established, right? In psychological approach, they say that emotional well-being is also important, take care of his emotional needs. Here, through these studies, he established that productivity depends, he is talking about the end product. Productivity depends, was not only affected by physical conditions or financial incentives, but also by the social relations or the recognition and a sense of belonging. How you treat them. Are you treating them with a sense of belonging or with a brotherly or fraternity attitude? How social relation you are maintaining with them, and how are you recognizing them? All these factors play a role. Okay, more or less like psychological approach, but he's talking at the end product. Workers' productivity will be affected by this. That is what this approach is focusing on. Focus on people, not just process. Do not look at labor like their means of production. No, they are also people at the end of the day. Before looking them like laborers or factors of production, first treat them like humans, just like your co-human. Communication, participation are very important. Motivation has to be given beyond money. His psychological and social needs must be met. Teamwork, you should ensure that there are good relations in your own team, between or among the employees also. Ensure there exist good relations and try to build that. Leadership style has to be always supportive in nature and democratic in nature, so that they don't feel like the authoritative attitude from employers should be avoided. Okay, that's all human relations approach. Sociological, this approach is influenced by human relations theory itself. So it will be more or less the same. But this is talking, see, human relations, there are minute differences. Try to understand them clearly. Human relation approach is talking at a human level, between two humans or among human groups. But sociological approach is talking about societal level, societal level problems, or how the social discrimination, caste discrimination, gender discrimination, societal level pay. So it looks through lens of society. Human relations approach is more like micro part, this is macro level part. Looks at employment relations, this is all the three approaches we said, right? These three do not just look economic, they look beyond the economic relations. Social interactions by values, norms, power structures, group dynamics. It emphasizes the human and social aspects of the work. How are the social aspects in the work culture? Whether any groups are formed based on caste, or based on religion, or just women are formed as one group, men are formed as one group. That aspects of work also are taken into account. It is seen as a mini society in itself. IR, industrial relation is, industry is also mini society. It is also having its own, in society we have certain rules and regulations, right? Industry is also a small society. It also have its own values, own rules, own norms. This is influenced by human relations theory. So far, any doubts? Try to be attentive in class and try at least noting down the points, important points. Like I'm going pretty slow. These are conceptual things. You only remember through lectures. It's like మీరు మామూలుగా చదువుకుంటే ఏముంది ఇందులో అనుకుని అలా చదువుకొని వెళ్ళిపోతారు, గుర్తుండవు, వింటేనే గుర్తుంటాయి. ఇందులో అడిగే క్వశ్చన్ అడగడానికి ఏముంది అనుకుంటారు, అందులో నుంచే క్వశ్చన్ వస్తుంది, అప్పుడు కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అవుతారు. నెక్స్ట్ మనకి చాలా ఆ తర్వాత అంతా మనం చదివేది మోస్ట్లీ ఫ్యాక్చువల్ ఉంటుంది. లాస్, ఇఫ్ యూ గో త్రూ దట్ లాస్ టాపిక్ ఆర్ దట్ మాడ్యూల్, ఇట్స్ లైక్ దిస్ law talks about this, numbers, factual information. This is conceptual, that is more factual. Let's move on to the next approach. It's not given by a single person, I guess. This is a sociological approach. Many sociologists have together come up with it. Okay. Our favorite person, Gandhi. Two things that come into your mind when you hear of him is truth, non-violence. He follows these principles in everything he does. Even in his approach towards industrial relations, these are the two things that he stuck to. Okay. Satya and Ahimsa. So conflicts should be settled peacefully without resorting to strikes, lockouts or violence. Dialogues and persuasion are preferred. So what Gandhi basically says is, you remembered when is CAK? What are the first movements that Gandhi involved in after coming to India? 1916, 17, 18 type. Champaran, Ahmedabad, Kedah. That's CAK. That is how I remember it. So in Ahmedabad mill strike, this is a picture from there only, I guess, if I've taken, I don't remember. It's Ahmedabad mill strike. That is an industrial strike because of not giving bonus or wages. I don't remember the purpose properly. Ahmedabad mill strike, he got involved, and that is a strike. That's a peaceful hunger strike. So that is what he says. First of all, he do not promote strikes. Strike should be only used as a last resort. Only if nothing works out, then go for the strike as a last resort. Even if you go for a strike, it should be very peaceful, no militant action, no weapons, nothing. Okay, that is what Gandhi believes in. He gave a concept called trusteeship. What is meant by trustee or trusteeship? A simple, I mean, in normal English terms. Trustee, Gandhi says that whatever the wealth the rich people are holding with them, they are just the caretakers of the wealth. That wealth belongs to the entire society, or that wealth belongs to all the people of the country. They are just holding the wealth on behalf of them. So rich are only the caretakers of the wealth, and at the end of the day, the rich should spend all the wealth on the society or the labor class or whoever not having money, the poor people. That is what Gandhi says. Practically, it is impossible. They don't do it. But that is what Gandhi says. Gandhi says, employers are just the trustees of the wealth, or employers are just the caretakers of the wealth. They are just taking care of the wealth, but they have to spend it on people at the end of the day. So these three concepts are followed by Gandhi in industrial relations. So trusteeship, trustees of wealth, holding it not for personal gain. They should not use the wealth for the personal gain. Instead, they have to use it for the welfare of workers and society. As I already said, he is not a fan of strikes and all. First of all, try to resolve the issue through voluntary arbitration. Dispute should be referred. We talked about it, right? Arbitration, a neutral third party would be present. It should be referred to impartial third parties for resolution, and instead of using coercive measures, no forceful measures has to be taken. Instead, go for arbitration. Voluntary arbitration here meant both the parties should voluntarily accept and appoint a neutral third party. Mutual respect and cooperation are very much important. They should not, employees or employers should not view themselves as enemies. They should always try to work in cooperation, okay? Self-reliance of the workers. So in other theories we are reading, right, conflicts, trade unions. So in Gandhi's approach also we have to see how Gandhi looks at conflicts or trade unions or conflicts matlab strikes. So he says strikes has to be a last resort, not as an initial thing, even if it is done in a peaceful, harmonious way. So trade unions. For Gandhi, trade unions are important, but don't view trade unions as the only means for conflict resolution. There are other things also that trade unions can do. They can promote, I mean, yesterday, I think there is a slide that where we read role of trade unions. Did I mention only one point that they play a role in collective bargaining and conflict resolution? No, they play many significant roles. They have their own fund. If something happens to them, one of the employees, they'll try to spend that amount on that employee for health or education purpose of the children, whatever it is. So for Gandhi, trade unions should serve beyond that, not just for collective bargain or conflict resolution. They should ensure that there is self-discipline among workers. If an employer goes and tells to an employee, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, then employee won't listen. Just imagine if a trade union leader is saying that we should perform well or we should be productive, we should produce these many units, then that particular employee would listen. So trade unions should work collectively in order to promote the self-discipline among their workers. Okay. So while they are demanding for certain rights, they should also ensure that they do their own part, right? Why do we have both fundamental rights and fundamental duties? While giving rights, we also expect certain duties from your side. So that is what Gandhi says. When trade unions are asking for certain rights of their own, first of all, perform your duty as a labor, then ask for rights. Gandhi promoted unionization but encouraged unions to focus on moral strength, discipline, and self-restraint instead of militant action. Hope these points are clear. Gandhian methods: conciliation and mediation, voluntary arbitration instead of strikes, arbitrary neutral bodies, non-violent strikes, peaceful, disciplined and non-violent, appeal to conscience. Okay. Moral sense. Okay. Awakening the moral sense of employers rather than enforcing legal or violent measures. See, we have all the acts, right? We have Factories Act. It says you have to form a canteen, you have to form a crèche, or you should ensure there is safety in the workplace, humane working conditions. Just because they are there in the act, employers are following it. Just imagine there is no act as such. Then will employers follow it or not? Will they follow it? They might not follow it or they may follow it. It depends on their personality, their moral values. Voluntarily, if they think, I have to give safe drinking water to the labor, or I have to provide them good food, good canteen, or hygienic restrooms, if they do it out of voluntarily, then it is because of their moral values. It is not because of legal compulsions. So Gandhi says that moral consciousness has to be brought in within the employers. It shouldn't be just because of legal compulsions. Okay. So what is the most moral approach towards industrial relations? It's one of the questions. See, if you just read this statement, Gandhi believed in awakening the moral sense of employers rather than enforcing legal measures. You think what question can come from this? Nothing. You just blindly read the statement and go forward. But whenever you read a statement, pause a minute, try to think of it, analyze it, then go to the next. Just don't blindly read it. And in this case, I am telling you how to, I am not just reading the slide, I am elaborating you with example and telling you, so you'll remember it in the class itself. So the most moral or the ethical theory so far is Gandhi. He says awakening has to be in the moral sense, not because of legal compulsions. So trade unions' role we already discussed. Workers' rights safeguarding is obviously one particular aspect or objective of trade union, but emphasis has to be in moral persuasion. So here he is not only talking about the moral side of employer, he is also talking about the moral side of the employee. It has to be emphasis on moral persuasion rather than coercion. to encourage workers to fulfill their duties while demanding the rights or treatment, to maintain the discipline, self-restraint and constructive cooperation. Okay, this approach is clear. What do you remember in Gandhian approach? Truth, non-violence, trusteeship concept, moral concept. Gandhi asked strikes to be resorted as a last, strikes to be conducted as a last resort in a peaceful manner. And trade unions should work beyond just safeguarding the rights. They should have the moral responsibilities of fulfilling their duty in the first place. Trust, yes. That is one common question. Trusteeship concept is given in which approach? It is Gandhian approach. I think this will be our last approach for today. Have you heard of this name? V.V. Giri. This is V.V. Giri approach, okay? You remember reading about him anywhere in your history or freedom struggle? He is 4th President of India. He is also a Labour Minister of India. If I'm not wrong, it is, I'm not sure with the numbers. I guess it is 52 to 54 and this is 69 to 74. He's a Labour Minister and also this personality is very important because he is the labor rights activist or freedom fighter towards labor rights. So he's a very important personality. He's Labour Minister and 4th President, and he also wrote a book, Industrial Relations and Labor Problems in India. See, if I say certain personality is important, read about him. See, there might come a question, which of the following regarding V.V. Giri's the right statement? 4-5 statements will be given. You just have to write it. So why do we have to take a chance of not reading about him? The important thing that he talks is, he wants government role to be just a mediator. Government should not enforce the rules and regulations. Like, it should not tell industries or establishments, do this, this is mandatory to do. Government's role should not be that. It should facilitate it or it should mediate it, but should not enforce or forcefully in a coercive manner, should not enforce anything on industries. Okay. He advocated conciliation, arbitration, mutual settlement. See, he advocated all the collective bargaining methods. Oppose the compulsory, he do not want the government's role, compulsory adjudication. It means there are certain laws in which further slides, if we read certain acts, if certain provisions are violated, that case will go to Labour Court or Tribunal. So it is stating that mandatory adjudication by the government, right? So he wants, again is this concept. This is one of the previous year question, I guess. Which of the following approaches again is the compulsory adjudication? He do not want the role of, maybe for two purposes. If it goes, it gets delayed and it also overburdens the government, right? In either ways, he says, or he is opposing compulsory adjudication and he advocates these methods and he opposes this method. Believed in the strength of trade unions and workers' organizations, and yes, he is someone who believes that they have to exist. Industrial peace to be achieved through collective, this is the same point getting repeated. He wants collective bargaining, negotiations and all. Stressed on the government's role as mediator rather than an enforcer. Okay, he wants government to be a mediator rather than an enforcer. The same is mentioned in this slide. Go for collective bargaining first. If this doesn't work, then go for voluntary arbitration. State intervention has to be very minimal. It's opposite to it actually. Government machinery and compulsory adjudication should be the last resort. Only when the other methods fail. Excessive state intervention weakens trade unions and collective. Okay. What this is saying is, when we say that government will come in between and it will settle the issue, then do you think trade unions will be strong enough? No. Employers won't listen to trade unions. The strength of trade unions or either employer association also. Employers are coming up and saying something for the employees association. They will also think, no, we will go to court, come. So it will be like, these institutions' role will not be strengthened. They will be weakened. That is the reason he says the role of state intervention has to be minimal. Okay? See, difference laga kaadu. Both are talking about the same point. The only difference is వాళ్ళు ఎలాగోకలా మ్యాటర్ సెటిల్ చేసుకోండి అని చెప్పింది. ప్లూరల్ ఇస్ ఐదర్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్, ఆర్బిట్రేషన్, ఏదో ఒకటి. ఇట్ డు నాట్, ద మెయిన్ ఫోకస్ ఇస్ నాట్ ఆన్ హౌ యూ రిజాల్వ్ ద ఇష్యూ. ఆ ప్లూరలిస్టిక్ అప్రోచ్లో ద మెయిన్ కోర్ ఐడియా ఇస్ different parties with different interests, hence conflicts are inevitable, hence trade unions exist. Core idea adi. Explanation of part of this is solution. Ila edo method to solution untadi. Kani ikkada core idea ne government adjudication undaddu, arbitration, negotiation methods undali. Idi core idea. If a question has to come, it revolves around this core idea. If question has to come, dantlo solution enti anedi primary question kaadu. Core idea enti anedi primary. Workers' participation, decision making and joint consultations to involve Abali. Believe this would reduce the industrial unrest. Trade unions should be strong and responsible. Strong, responsible trade unions are necessary for successful bargaining. He advocated unity and discipline among unions. This is also advocated by Gandhian. If the same thing is given by two approaches, then just imagine, just assume that the two options won't be at the same place in the options. In the question options, it will be clear. You can mark the answers with 100% guarantee. Oxford approach, this is not much important approach as an exam perspective. Just 1 to 2 pointers given by these people, Ellen Flanders, Clegg and Fox. It views, okay, Oxford, you blindly remember, it talks about rules, institutions. In this approach, it links everything with the rules. Oxford approach is something which links everything with rules. Okay, rules are the core part of industrial relations. This is what it assumes. Views industrial relations as a system of rules created to regulate the relations. Focus on rule making, collective bargaining. The role of state is minimal, only to provide a legal framework. Here also role of state is minimal. But this might not be the core idea of it. Gray approach may also, role of state is minimal. But that is the core thing of that approach. This is something, a least important thing of this approach. Even if these two approaches are in the same question, you go for Giri approach than answering this approach. That is how you you should not get confused there. Which approach in this two are applicable? How do you answer it? You should not get such doubts. Emphasizes on institutions. That is why this is also called institutional approach. So, who gave this approach? System of rules, also called institutional approach. These are the points that you remember. Rules are the primary thing. Trade unions, okay. Conflict resolution, okay. Role of state minimal. That's why they want voluntary kind of settlement. Oxford approach done. Nothing much. Indi. ఇన్స్టిట్యూషన్ అంటే ట్రేడ్ యూనియన్ అవ్వచ్చు, ఎంప్లాయర్స్ అసోసియేషన్ అవ్వచ్చు, గవర్నమెంట్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూషన్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, ఏవైనా కూడా. ఇక్కడ మీరు చూస్తే ట్రేడ్ యూనియన్స్ చూడండి, దే హెల్ప్ ఫ్రేమ్ అండ్ ఎన్ఫోర్స్ వర్క్ ప్లేస్ రూల్స్. దే హెల్ప్ అండ్ ఫ్రేమ్ వర్క్ ప్లేస్ రూల్స్. కాన్ఫ్లిక్ట్ రెజల్యూషన్, industrial conflict is natural but can be resolved through collective bargaining and negotiated rules. So everywhere it talks about rules, okay. Now action theory approach. This is a very simple approach. Action. As I said the word action, what do you remember? The first thing that comes into your mind? Is it not movie, theatre, cinema? Action. So let us take an example of the same and understand this theory. Action. There will be actors involved in an action. So let us assume a stage, actors to play a skit or to play some drama or skit on stage. What all we need? A stage is required to perform. Actors, audience are obviously required. A script has to be there. Providing all these inputs, they will perform it in certain way. Based on how they perform, response or reaction of audience will be there, whether to clap or whether to throw chappals. Okay. So in our case, what is the stage? The industry is the stage, or the establishment is the stage. Who are the actors? Employees, employers, government. All these three parties are standing on the stage. What is the script? Already existing rules and regulations are the script. Already existing rules or regulations. This is the script we gave to them. Based on these rules and regulations, now you people interact, you people perform based on this. But it is not always based on these rules and regulations they act, right? Suppose script might be something, on stage they went and forgot it. They performed it the other way. Then that have its impact on the performance. Okay. And that will have the impact on how we react, how the new rules are framed. Understood? Simple example. Industry, in an industry, these are the actors. They interact with each other based on rules, regulations, or based on certain societal norms or values. Based on all the given conditions, they interact with each other, and that results in new kind of rules. This is more like, does this not sound more like the systems approach given by Dunlop? Just try to link it with the previous things that we studied. He also says the same. Environmental factors, these will be the players in it, results in the form of new rules. This is more or less the same. So, people's name associated with Popper and Parsons, but it is applied to IR by Heek and others. In this case, people's name are not so significant because too many people are involved. Views industrial relations as a social interaction process. So, on the stage, they are interacting with each other. Social interaction is going on based on the existing environmental conditions. Stresses on actions and behavior of individuals in shaping the relations. So, industrial relation is shaped by the actions, the interactions, and the meanings that individuals and groups attach to their roles, unlike structural or rule-based approach. So, now we are thinking, how is it different from the systems approach? Action theory approach focuses on human agency, how people interpret situations and act accordingly. So, the same person might act in one way. I might say the same class tomorrow in a different way. Today I am saying it in a different way. So, how they interact depends on the human agency. I mean, how they are as a person. Okay, it is focusing on that micro aspects. Systems approach, when you talk about it, it is talking as a societal impact under environmental factors, how they react with each other. This is saying at a human level, what are the minute things that also matter? Those are also taken into consideration in action theory approach. Micro level analysis. Unlike systems approach, that is at macro level, this theory looks at micro level processes like shop floor behavior, group dynamics, leadership styles. Dynamic, this is also, see, systems approach is also dynamic, this is also dynamic, both are dynamic. So, you won't get both the options in the same question, even if asked. So, it evolves through continuous interactions. They keep interacting with each other, they come up with different rules and regulations. Any doubts?